was a baseball field when I first moved into town. And so I think we should let the naming committee do their work, not pass this motion this evening. Let them clear up the confusion, because there obviously is a little bit of confusion, not a huge amount, with the name. But I think it needs to have Averill in it. But I think we need to let the committee finish its work.
And I would agree with this. Any more comments here before we do have a motion on the table. We have a motion first and second. So should we take votes? So all those in favor of Councilman Burchard, or do you want to withdraw your motion?
I'll just withdraw, because I'm still learning this as well, but I agree with both of you. So, but I think it must stay with that name. I'm not going to butcher it again. So.
Okay. Okay. So, and you're willing to withdraw your second, Councilman Burchard? Okay, good. So that's you got one more.
Sorry, my second thing is for the city attorney, and it's about the legality of citizens stating their name and address, and whether or not that is indeed, I don't know the terminology. It's not necessarily illegal for us to ask that or request that folks state that. I just wanted to know, is there something within our own city statute that says that it's okay for us to ask that information? And we ask that information because I truly want to know where folks live, because first and foremost, I represent the citizens of Snohomish. If you don't vote in the city, thank you for coming to the meeting, but
we don't.
First order of business are the folks that live in this city, and that's who I support. That's who elected me. Yes. So I usually get booed. But that's what I'm here for, and that's why I'm glad that we asked that, because now I know. But we want to make sure going forward that we're not being viewed as folks that are finding out where people live, and we're going to go do things to your house and scare you. That's not how we operate. We have too much other things going on in our lives to worry about that. But I just wanted some direction, and if you can please just guide us appropriately, so that going forward, it's not a big deal if folks don't want to give their name and address, but are they required to or not?
I'll be glad to answer that question, Councilman Rothschild, but I'll apologize in advance because the answer isn't quite as simple as it may seem on its face. The Open Public Meetings Act has a provision in it that says that government cannot require people to give their identify themselves by name and address as a condition of attendance at a meeting. So to get in the door, to come into this room and participate in this meeting, it's not appropriate for the city to require them for attendance. What the law doesn't address, the Open Public Meetings does not address, can this council require citizens as a condition of addressing the council to talk to you, not to attend the meeting, but to talk to you, to provide their name and address. The law doesn't address that. There is no case in the state of Washington that addresses that. If you ask for my opinion about that, my opinion would be that the city should not make it mandatory, but more voluntary in the case of public comment. There's a distinction between public comment and public testimony in a public hearing that's quasi-judicial in nature. This council doesn't hold very many of those anymore, but your hearing examiner does. Those are things like for site-specific reasons, conditional use permits, and so forth. The nature of that type of comment is really testimony, and it should be under oath testimony. And in those limited instances, it's appropriate to require name and address, and here's why. The reason why is that any party that testifies in those type of hearings is considered to be a party of record. And they're entitled to notice of the decision. They're entitled to get notice so they can appeal if they don't agree. And there's no practical way to get those people notice if they don't provide who they are and where they live. But in all other regular public comment, the city should not make it mandatory, but it's certainly okay and perfectly legal to request it. When a person declines, and they don't want to give their name and address under normal public comment, that's their prerogative. Is it helpful to have that? Probably so for council, so they know who's addressing them. But mandatory, probably not. It's certainly not, it can't be made mandatory to come in here and attend this meeting, to sign up on a sign-up sheet as to who's here and what your name and address are. But like I said, there's no case law or specific legal guidance in the Open Public Meetings Act about when someone wants to address you as a council at the podium.
And you will notice that typically I ask people to please give us name and address, and then I said, but if you don't want to, you can still speak, and so as you don't have to sign up and say. That's been our strategy here, and I think it's one that's working.
I guess one additional thing I would add, Mayor, is that in my 35 years of being city attorney, I can't recall ever a situation where if someone declined to give their name and address when they addressed the council, that they were denied an opportunity to address you.
Okay, so I am going to recuse myself and, oh, you have a comment.
Thank you, Guzak. I intended to bring this subject matter up also. I want to just land a little bit more. I was sort of bothered after the last meeting with the quorum that was going on here. And I also went and looked up the RCW 42.30.40, and I had this conversation before council meeting tonight with our city attorney. And it does indeed state that a member of the public shall not be required as additional attendance at the meeting to give a name or other information. I also went back and I looked at Resolution 1311, which was on our agenda back in January. We passed and became effective February 4th of this year. And this resolution deals with procedures for the conduct of business at council meetings, and it repealed a previous resolution. And under subsection 6A.2, where it talks about public testimony, it says the identification of speakers. And it says specifically the person testifying shall identify themselves for the record as to the name, address, and organization. And that's always sort of been the process that I'm familiar with here. If you go to the county, it's the same process there. However, I also agree with the city attorney in that if somebody doesn't want to give their name for whatever reason, I think they should be allowed to decline it. But it has been customary practice to always request that. And I would just find here that Resolution 1311 talks about decorum. It talks about decorum in our council meeting. And I'll come back to the public testimony in just a second here. I would remind council to go back and look at this and think about decorum also when we're dealing with social media. You know, a lot of things happen out there, and we don't always know who says something because they may disguise themselves. And that has certainly been a right in this country from the founding of it. You're back to the mid-1700s, and during the Revolutionary War, people were using pseudonyms to speak out against the crown. And again, it's a protection that we enjoy. It is part of the First Amendment. Having been an editor or publisher for most of the years, I firmly believe in the First Amendment, the right for people to speak and do things. But we as public officials, as elected representatives, we need to remind ourselves how we interact with them. And one of the things that came out, why we got to the Open Government Committee, is talking about being more open. And it's just like a relationship with your significant other. If you're not open with them, there's going to be some friction, put it mild. And I think that this council has always been interested in being open and how we communicate with people and how we stick to the issues and really kind of stay on the high ground. One thing last thing I want to talk about with the public testimony, subsection 3 of all that talks about time limitations. And it says individuals will be allowed 3 uninterrupted minutes to speak. And now we have a timer, a visual timer. It's audible at the end. I think it's important that they have their 3 minutes of uninterrupted time for all individuals who wish to speak and add comments. And it further says, at the discretion of the presiding officer, with concurrence of council, additional time for receipt of oral and written testimony may be allowed. And it says very designated timekeeper, which you do indeed have. Now, if we have a meeting where we have lots of people here, 100, 150 people, like we did when we discussed public safety and marijuana, 3 minutes is a pretty strict time limit. But if we have a handful of people who are talking and it says, they stay on topic and they're saying very exciting things. It's just kind of a reminder that in the resolution we adopted, somebody might be allowed a little bit additional time. And so there is an opportunity for leeway. Certainly when I've conducted meetings in the Planning Commission, and I've seen other mayors do in the past, and this is really at the discretion of the person sitting in the chair seat. If somebody's staying on topic, we might give them a little leeway, because we as council want all the important information that somebody may be willing to give to the audience. I sat in the back row with Mr. Davis many years, and have often spoken before council. And mindful of those 3 minutes, and it was an important subject, important matter. I might write it out ahead of time and start out a 10-minute speech and whittle it down to 3 minutes, actually time it out. So those words were important. It was incredibly important. I provided written documentation to council, and that written documentation would turn the public record, and for us to have adequate time to look at it before, says in here, by 1 o'clock on the Thursday before the meeting, and we'd love to receive that material. We want all the information that we can gather. I spoke with somebody at the boat launch opening talking about what happens in these public meetings. We only get to meet a couple hours twice a month, and all of our public business is going to be conducted here. And some things like water rates, water that we were talking about at the last meeting, happens over years, and we've reflected a lot of information, and maybe you've just seen what's the most current thing. But it's important for us to have all the information that we can get. And you're right, 3 minutes at that podium is nothing. You're lucky to be able to get to highlight something really important. But to give us information beforehand so that we have the opportunity to discuss that information is important to me, and I believe it's important to the council members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. I appreciate those comments. All right, I'm going to recuse myself and turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Shalai.
Okay, as we know, this action item is regarding reimbursement for legal expenses for Mayor Guzak regarding the recall charges being brought against her. And so I'm going to turn it over to City Attorney Mr. Reed to explain this item.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Shalai. I thought it would be important and hopefully helpful to the council to give you a real kind of summary overview of what the recall process involves and the steps in that process, and then leading up to a decision on this issue. I know the hour is late, so I'll try to keep this as summary as possible. But the the recall statutes in state law have about 17 different sections in state law. The first step in the process is that a voter within the political subdivision that's involved, which in this case is Snohomish, can prepare a typewritten charge against an elected official, which requires a detailed description of the charge. That written description needs to be provided under oath and signed by the individual. So that's in a nutshell, step one, and that has been done with regard to Karen Guzak, your fellow council member and mayor. Second step is that written charge gets filed with the county auditor elections division, and that charge gets served on the individual whose recall has been demanded. That's step two. Step three under state law is that within 15 days, the recall request, let me back up. The recall request then is submitted to, in the case of the city, to the county prosecuting attorney's office to prepare what's called a ballot synopsis. The prosecutor prepares a ballot synopsis of not more than 200 words. It's not a comment on the adequacy or the legal sufficiency of the recall charges. It's simply a summary of what's been alleged, and that has to be 200 words or less. That ballot synopsis then gets transmitted and certified to the Superior Court. In our case, it would be Snohomish County Superior Court over in Everett. Then it's the court's role to conduct a hearing within 15 days following receipt and certification from the prosecutor's office. And this